Okay everyone, welcome back to the channel for another video on Gran Turismo 7. I am back with a new track guide for this week's Daily Race C at Nurburgring Sprint track in the GT3 car. So we haven't done this combination yet as a guide. So wanted to get you a guide out. We've used the Porsche for the time trial. Now I have got a setup that I'm going to share with you later on in this video also. That will be good enough to use in the race with the McLaren and also the Porsche. I've been using it in both. And it works perfectly in the race with the McLaren, because you don't really want to use the Porsche for the race, because this is a no-stop race. So you want to be really saving your tyres to the end, and the McLaren is really good for that. So I'm going to go through this, show you the brake markers and everything you need to know to try and get this lap as quick as possible. I've managed a reasonably solid lap. We went back on last night after I fixed my connector into the base, and luckily it seems to be working okay at the moment. So starting your lap, obviously try and get a nice clean exit from this final corner, getting that power down. I've got -2 brake bias on. That is because with the setup that I've got, it's a little bit more rotation-y. It wants to rotate a bit. So going into turn 1, we're looking for the 100 board on the left-hand side. You're going to see it approaching, and we're going to brake just before that. You can actually see pretty much at the end of the tarmac that sticks out on the left of us now. It's basically dead level with that. Now we're going to go down through the gears. We're going to brake in a straight line, because with the MR car, you want to stay a little bit wider than some of the FR cars. So we see how I'm staying a little bit wider than Damien. And then down to first gear, and your right-hand tyre needs to just skim that curb on the right, and then throttle inputs on as you're coming out the exit. Be careful you don't put the throttle down too early while you're going over the curb, because that's an easy crash. Now, we're going to brake just before that little bit of tarmac, or whatever that is on the right-hand side. Just before that, you can see there. But I don't actually look at that. I just look at the curb as I'm approaching and do it by line of sight. So I like to focus on the apex, and that gives you a better run through this corner. Now, just be very cautious on the throttle free. You can see I'm putting like 60-70% throttle in. I'm not going maximum attack. Use as much of the track as you can on the outside here, and then brake nice and early. You want to be braking before the end of the green Astro. You can see the Mercedes in front of me is basically at the end of the green Astro. So you're braking a little bit before that, and then you're going to rotate this car down into first gear, get the left-hand tyre over the cobbled part of the track, and then accelerate in a straight line. And now you're going to go up into second gear. Now what we're going to do is we're going to give it a little lift just before we go in. See, just as we go up to second gear, watch us lift off the throttle and let it rotate a bit, and then back onto the throttle, and then use the curb, and now keep the power down all the way on the exit here. But make sure you get that car back over before you go onto the grass, because you don't want to pick up dirty tyres. Now, next braking, we're braking just before the 100 board on the left-hand side there. You can see braking just going in just short of that 100 board. Now, this corner is extremely important for your lap time, because you've got to keep it very, very narrow into the apex all the way through here. So watch what we do as we go through. You'll see Damien doing it as well in the Mercedes. You want to get up onto the curb, and you want to stay as tight and as narrow as you can through this corner, because if you run wide, you lose so much lap time. So it's all about hogging that inside, then slowly feeding the throttle in. Very, very cautious on the throttle inputs there, because if you go too early, you either understeer or you can snap the rear. So this corner, then we use a white line, braking just before that white line on the track. A lot different to the full layout, because you're going slower speed, so you can actually brake a little bit later. Then we're going to accelerate through this corner. Be careful on the rear as you're trying to get the car back over to the left-hand side. Then just onto the brakes. Once your left-hand tyre is almost touching that white line, onto the brakes. And now we're going to try and rotate it into this fast right-hand corner. Now, you want to get on the throttle as early as you can, just as you're skimming the apex onto the throttle. Be careful you don't run into the gravel. And now we're going to accelerate down into the next braking zone for the chicane. Now, this is a tricky one. This is all about attacking and kind of abusing track limits. So we're going to go into the 100 board on the right-hand side, braking just before that. That's your reference. Now, we're going to brake in a straight line, and then we're going to turn in very, very early, because we want this car to go right over the first part of the chicane. So the middle of the car is going to be right up onto the curb, and the left-hand tyre is actually going to be over the curb. So watch as we go through. You can see Damien's car all the way over the curb, and now we're going to aim for the bollard ahead of us. We want to almost go straight into it. So look at the bollard in front of us, straight over that bollard, and then just be careful you don't run wide on the exit. Use as much of the track as possible, and then into the final corner. This is kind of an awkward braking zone. I don't really have a reference. I just do it by looking at the apex and judging it by the speed. So just make sure you don't brake late, because you're going to obviously then go deep into the corner. You want to try and, again, hog the inside of this corner, because if you don't, you lose quite a lot of lap time. So then onto the throttle nice and early, powering your way over to the finishing line, and we're going to go over with a 1 minute 23.5, I think it is. So yeah, 1 minute 23.5, reasonably solid lap. So let me show you the setup that I used for that, and I use the same setup for the McLaren as well. So you can see there, we got the roll bars on 6.6, and damping ratio on the compression all the way to the left, and then the rear on the expansion all the way to the right, but the front on the damping expansion slightly lower to 5. Now this will work with the McLaren also. Now this gives you very good rotation in high speed corners as well, so for higher speed tracks it will work pretty good as well. So if you want to use that in other tracks, it will work. Now one thing to remember is you can alter the setup slightly if you want to go with a bit more of an aggressive setup. Rear anti-roll bar a little bit higher than the front. I tried it and it does feel faster, but what I will say is it's very, very tricky and it feels harder to drive like that. So although the potential might be quicker, I think that the chances are you're going to have a bit of an issue, and I also think it kills the rear tyres a bit more anyway. But let's have a little watch of the lap from the chase camera using the kilometers now, and you can see the lap done at full speed now. So again, look at the cobbles, how we use that part of the track there. That's really important to widen the line in to this right-hand corner. And again, we'll pay attention to this right-hander because this is a really important corner on this track. Really hugging it nice and tight. So look how close we keep to the apex. We do not let that car run off wide, because if you do, you literally will lose about 2 tenths in one corner by just slightly offline in that corner. So you really have to focus on that corner as your main priority for your lap time, really. It has to be perfect every time. If you mess that corner up, you're not going to get a good lap in. That's what I found. Obviously the chicane as well. The chicane is vitally important. As we come up to that now, you can see how I attack that, and you can see how I go straight over the bollard as well. So into the first part, right over the first part, middle of the car, and then aim for the bollard. I always aim for the bollard. That is a reference. If you hit that in the middle of the car, you won't get a penalty. If you go to the right of it, you're very likely going to get a penalty. So yeah, try and aim the middle of the car at that bollard, use the full track width on the exit of the final corner, and a pretty solid lap. Hopefully this will help you out. Remember, you can use that setup for the McLaren that I showed you there for the race. It works perfectly fine in the McLaren. And yeah, hopefully I'll see you for more of these videos. Make sure you subscribe, hit the like button, and let me know in the comments if it's helped you out. Thanks again, everyone.